For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of a pitching video on how you pitch your new Outwell Stonehill tent. So with me here I've got the Stone Lake 7. We're just going to kind of show you the pitching process of it all really. It's going to be a bit of a quick run through. I've got to do I'll kind of explain what I'm doing as I go. What I will be doing is we'll have a separate video, sort of just sped up, no talking, just if you want to quickly run through it, it's a bit easier to do. So first and foremost, let's get the tent out. We'll move it out the way here for a second. As you can see, we've got a patch of grass where it was, so I've literally just packing it away, pitching it straight away. So we're just going to lay it out first and foremost. Ideally, you want to probably get a footprint down first. It means you're not going to kill the grass, but it keeps the base all nice and clean. Unravel the tent. We want to kind of start by unraveling the tent directly over the top of the footprint, so there's no section of footprint visible. Once you've done this, what it'll allow you to do is keep everything clean and dry, but also it's going to mark the pitch of the tent out as well. So by having a footprint, I would highly recommend it. Just keeps it all neat and tidy. Now, first thing I want to do is basically peg the main four corners of where the ground sheet's sewn in. So this is going to basically be the sleeping area and or the living area as well. So I've got my trusty mallet, got a few pegs. Ideally you want your sort of peg to go in about a 45-degree angle, just to make sure it's all going to be sort of staying there nice and neatly. Always start with the back personally. Again, said you want to make sure you completely cover your footprint of the product, but it's always best to get it kind of nice and tight as you can. Pegging at a 45-degree angle just keeps it nice and easy. That way, if for any reason you've got any wind, it's not going to sort of lever itself up. You kind of want to pull against all the sections, just to kind of make sure it's nice and taut. Ideally, you want it to be as square as possible, or rectangular, obviously, in this case. Lovely rock down there. So once you get to this stage, now the main body's perfectly fine. Now, with the Stonehill in general, the front does kind of bow around a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is just bring the canopy out forward. Just kind of lay it out. Now, the first beam you see located here, you want to pitch that almost dead in line so it's nice and square along this section here. So just making sure that's nice and neat. You can put it in approximately and then tweak it as you go. We'll do one side then the other. And it's got a strap against it, so you can kind of pull against it and make sure you are kind of as square as you can be. And then again, this one we want to be kind of fairly square. These sort of things you can tweak as you kind of go, so it's not the end of the world. You ideally want to be fairly in line to the best of your ability. It's always better to have probably the pain point as loose as possible, just that enables you to sort of tension it at a later date. Here's a bit of an art. Ooh, I've gone too tight on that one. So this one's the very front corner, so it steps in a little bit. Keep trying to get the tension forward, and then what we can do is adjust it against this one here, if that makes sense. So basically we're still bringing it forward, now we're getting a kind of door width correctly. Still want to try and get that peg in at a 45-degree angle, just keeps it nice and secured. Once we're in this position here, what we can then do is start to inflate it. So we can grab our pump, pressure gauge on top, looking at about 7 psi, which is just about 0.4, nearly 0.45 as a bar. First thing that was most important is to make sure you press the valve in, because it basically closes the valve off. Nothing worse than doing all your pumping. Next thing you know, all your hard work's come out, mainly because you've been a bit of a dipstick and not put the valve back in. So the pressure gauge I can see down the bottom here just kind of goes nice and neatly. You want to go to full pressure, which is that. Off that pops. Personally, I like to start in the middle, just because it means you can go inside. The tent will freestand to a certain degree, and then you haven't got to worry about it. Apologies, this is a bit quick in terms of short, sharp and brief. I'm just trying to make it as sort of straightforward as possible, really. One, two, buckle my shoe, onto the third and fourth. You can, of course, buy an electric pump if you want to let it do it for you, but I think you can agree it doesn't take too much time, just do it on your own. And this is actually the Stonehill 7, sorry, Stonehill 7, which is actually the largest. So this is probably going to take you the longest out of the two models. It's also the biggest in the deluxe range as well. Lovely. So once we're 3 beams up, we can just go inside of it. Just push that in place. Just make sure it's all sitting nice and neatly as you'd want it to be. So now we've kind of got those up, we can move to the back, get that bad boy inflated again. So same process, make sure the valve's on close, lock the pump in, good to go. It's all 7 psi. Perfect job. It's also worth mentioning to make sure you put the cap on as well after you finished each one, just because it acts as a secondary seal. Just for that only reason, it's also stops any dust or anything getting into the valve itself. Because it's kind of spring loaded, you want to make sure that's all sort of tickety-boo really. So electric pump does tend to be a little bit slower actually, so I don't think it takes a huge amount of pumping in general. There we go. Now, at this point here, what we want to do is probably tension the front and back guide points, just to make sure that roof is as tight as it possibly can be. Just get us looking a bit sharper as well. So, do the front, and then the back. From there, it obviously depends if the wind's coming from a certain direction. It's sometimes worthy of kind of just doing that bit as well. So now I've kind of done that, I don't mind sort of working my way around it, getting it kind of really nice and neat and tidy. Work through all the guide points. Just makes life kind of a lot easier. You want to make sure when you do kind of the all of the sections, you want to kind of follow the seam line down potentially, and that way, for example, with these, you want to go directly adjacent to the beams. Do the bottom as well to give it an extra bit more stability. Oops, daisy. And make sure you're going through the proper loop, not the fan-dangled one. It's also worth mentioning before you probably actually start pegging, you want to make sure you shut all the doors up, just because what you might find is you could potentially overstretch the doors if you're sort of going too much. Having to do both sips at the same time. Here we go. Yeah, it just makes it neat and tidy, and then you know kind of where you are. And it helps just to get the fabric looking that much bit sharper as well. Having high visibility guy ropes is always a bonus benefit. It just means you haven't got much of a trip hazard. You can quite clearly see where things are going. And again, that sort of front beam is kind of shaped a bit more, so it's angled forward. So it's making sure that roof's really nice and taut. You can obviously tweak as you go, if need be, but you want that kind of looking as tight as a drum. Personally, once all the kind of the main guide points are done, I then move towards the front door and just give that a little bit of TLC. Again, make sure in line with the leaves. And we're good to go. These aren't admittedly the official pegs you kind of get with the tent. They are just ones that I kind of we're using for the pitching video. Just makes life a bit easier, and tent going literally up and down saves using that. Now with the front door, I would recommend bring the points together. So you want to almost pull the door closed with the pegging points. Now what this is going to do is allow you to open and shut that door a bit kinder and easier really, just because it's pulling the fabric together and taking the weight and strain off that kind of front zip. Once we're at this point here, which all we need to do now is just the skirt around the bottom. Now, oddly enough, with this skirt, it actually comes externally rather than internally. Outwell are probably the ones who kind of do this, but that's the way it's been designed, so that's what we do. I mean, personally, I find it a bit of a pain because what you find is if you've got any water running off, then it kind of just generally kind of collects it. So not ideal in my book, but it is the way the tent is designed in that aspect. And so if you wanted the kind of the shorter version of this video, we've kind of done one without all of the jibber jabber and just kind of showing off the pitching process really. So that gives you a bit more, hopefully, an idea of how it goes up and how simple, easy one person can do it on its own. I suppose arguably more of this is more a tutorial video than a full-on pitching video as we traditionally do at Attwoolls. So hopefully it's been helpful. But there we go. All done, all dusted, up, ready to camp in, ready for a nice time away. Any more questions or queries, of course, do feel free to let us know. But that is how you go to pitch your Stonehill. We can move now on to how you pack it away. So now we're going to start by taking the Stonehill down. So first thing we want to do is make sure the front doors are open, side doors are open, and then what we're going to kind of do is just unpeg everything as we kind of go. So just go around basically. Really, you want to leave the last 4 pegs in. So that'll be the back 2, where we sort of almost started in reverse where we were going. So the back 2, and then kind of the front 2 where the ground sheet's sewn in. Arguably, it's kind of 6 pegs really. It just kind of makes it a bit easier, depending if where the wind is in relation to which you probably start with first. But nice and gradually make your way around. No real hardship or anything really. But the more obviously hands you have to it, the easier it becomes. But we can go as we go. Okay. Now what we're going to probably do in just a moment is we're going to open the front door. That's going to allow any excess air to come out. But really it's all about managing the internal airflow more than anything. Just because we've got the main... As we kind of what we try and do is deflate the beams from the back towards the front. So what this essentially will do is push all the internal air towards the front, where obviously the front door is nice and open. So in this position here, we'll just deflate the beams from the back towards the front. The middle door is open and the side door is open, so air can happily escape. But as we can see, drops the beams nice and neatly down. and all that air is falling straight out of the front section as well. Joys of these big valves, also the air comes out really nice and quickly, so it means it doesn't take an awful lot of time for it to all come out of. And by last one, it means least, we have the last one. At this point here, we can undo the canopy at the front. The reason we're doing this again is because there's no ground sheet sewn into this section. So it just means that when we come to fold it and put it away, we're only dealing with the area which is physically sewn in. Makes it easier to fold and put away. So because we've undone the very front two pegs, we've left the back two pegs in where the ground sheet is located. It means we can pull it against itself, and it keeps it all nice and neat, as we can see. So I personally like to kind of fold the door directly back, just because it means it's less likely to have the air's going to get trapped anywhere. Because all the valves are located on this side where I am now, and we'll just basically feed that. We'll sort of fold it from one side over to the other. So I'll just remove the last final 4 pegs, and then we'll kind of fold it in about a bag shaped width from one side over to the other. Chuck the guy ropes in if you can. Just ideally, if you want to be a bit more pedantic about it, of course you can just tie them up. It's entirely up to yourself. Makes life a bit easier sometimes if you do tie them up, but for the purpose of quick and ease, I'm just going to kind of do it. Now you can use the bag as a guide if you want to give you an indication. You want a bag shape width or a pump shape width. Go nice and squared. And what we're going to do is now sort of, because the valves are located on the far side over there, we're going to sort of start by folding it this side in and just give a bit of a press out so it's sort of pushing out towards that direction. With each fold, move it over. This is where, ideally, with a footprint, it means the ground sheet is going to be nice and clean and completely dry. So by doing this, we're again, not only pushing the air from out the tubes from the left to right, as we look at it now, by rolling it sort of back to forward, what you find is we're pushing all that internal air out towards the front door. If need be, the odd teddy bear roll is never a bad shout. And then, last but not least, the last fold, back over itself. Just fold it over to make sure it's the same way. Firstly, at this point, I like to give it one last little roll. Last scoop. Again, I think when you come to actually roll the tent for good, it's quite nice where it needs to be. You can always get your kids to kind of roll on top of it, squeeze the air out, get them to burn some energy. Hopefully it means a bit quiet in the car on the way home. But once at this stage here, we'll just quickly grab the bag. Voila! Good idea to have a bit of a check. Yeah, more than fine. If you sometimes there's a tie with it, what I would probably recommend doing is just chucking it underneath a little bit, like that. Just what you find is then it's when you roll it in position, the tie is ready to go where it needs to go. The more people you have, sometimes the easier it is, but we just kind of roll it out. Keep your weight kind of fairly over the top of the tent. Makes life a little bit easier. Whenever you get to a tube, you do notice it, so it can be sometimes a build-up in the air in there. But generally you should be okay. the last bit is always the worst bit because you've got more bulk and also that front canopy in section as well. Truth is always in the pudding. Well, proof's in the pudding when you get to this point here and the tie doesn't go round, then you know you're in a bit of trouble, but we're perfectly fine. Probably gone a little bit shorter. And then last but not least, pop the end in, little tilt upwards. Perfect, lovely room. Getting there myself. And that's it really. That's essentially how you're going to pack away your Stonehill tent. Any problems or questions, feel free to check the link below, but nice and easy, good to go. Sling it on your shoulder, and off we go.